Yes, I'm going to call the Capital Projects Committee to order. It's 5 minutes after 5, and we have a quorum. To begin the meeting, I would like, as also a way to test the mics for all of the members of the committee up here, to please introduce yourself and just start with Chairman Skidmore.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess it's going to be interesting. We're all chairmen, so we'll just have to Chairman. My name is Mark Skidmore. I'm Chairman of Public Works and Alderman of Ward 1.
Pat Campbell, Chairman of Public Safety, Alderman Ward 2.
Marshall Boyd, Public Works Director.
Steve Brown, I'm Alderman of Ward 4 and Chairman of the General Committee.
And my name is Eddie Robertson, and I'm Chairman of the Capital Projects Committee, and we do have a quorum, so we will proceed. First of all, the agenda has been submitted to committee members. Is there any discussion on the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda and move forward.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Chairman Campbell and a second by Chairman Skidmore. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? All right, unanimous. The first item of business, since we have some guests here today, is we want to jump to the inline hockey rink, a status report. I've asked Scott Robinson, he's the principal of Olympian Construction, and they've won the bid, and they are in process of doing the work. And so I've asked Scott or your representative to give a brief report tonight and be available to answer any questions that the committee members might have. So please introduce yourself and go right ahead, Wes.
Wes with Olympian Construction. We contracted the job this past March, end of March, about March 29th. We started a mobilization April 26th. And also in this past month, we've lost a few days of rain, but we've kind of picked that back up this past week on removing the dirt. At this point, we are finishing up site clearing, and in the next 2 weeks, we should get our shop drawings approved for the clear span building. The clear span building will be here around end of July, August for fabrication time, and we're looking at substantially complete the project around mid to late November. And also due to I think it's the T-deck, we were looking at the water line starting on June 1st. So at this point, the team that we've established, City of Hendersonville, Alderman Andy, everybody's been great with responses, and I feel like it's a really good team to get this thing at the end. So it's been good so far.
Good. Thank you.
Is there any questions y'all have?
Any questions from committee members?
Carry on.
Thank you, sir.
And thanks for the weekly reports. I think that you're providing those to the staff, that those are helpful, and we just want the job completed on time and under budget. So.
We do too. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Wes, and thank you, Scott, for being here. The next item, let's jump to the first item on the agenda, and that's the discussion of the city-county agreement to provide fire service in limited in unincorporated areas of the county. And I think the staff has done some work. So, Mr. Eckenroth, would you like to begin the staff presentation? And I know you're going to announce someone else to do it, but go ahead and start us off.
Thank you. We've received a draft MOU from the county. Staff has looked at it. We've raised a few questions. So we put some information together. The fire chief has put some information together for us to consider as we look at the MOU. So fire chief is going to come up. We're going to have a PowerPoint that's prepared, and it's going to ask some questions of us and give some background to the MOU, and then we can have discussion afterwards. So, Fire Chief.
Hey, thank you. Scotty Bush, the fire chief here. Obviously, when Jason gets my PowerPoint up and running, you guys have copies of that in your hands. as well if you don't want to keep looking up and down. Some of the maps are not as clear as we would like, but I don't know how much clearer we could have gotten those. But moving forward, this is just kind of some questions that were asked of me prior to coming to the meeting to be ready for, be prepared for, and have some information to present to you folks to make an educated decision on what you want to do moving forward. I don't know if we want to run down the questions one by one, Mr. Roberson, Mr. Eckenroth, or how you want to do that. I kind of laid the PowerPoint based off the questions. Sorry about that.
That's all right. You didn't know where I was going to end up.
So I don't know if you want to ask the questions first, or I have a copy of those questions. I can certainly just read off those and just go down through the PowerPoint. I want to give a huge shout out to Jason and IT, because this wouldn't be possible without my IT folks being able to help move things along. So one of the first questions asked was a map showing the current service area. You're probably not going to be able to see it too well on the TV, but in your packet, you can see a white or a grayish and a green area. Those areas, the grayish area is the city limits. Anything that's green is outside the city limits. So the grayish areas, of course, include Durham Farms, Fountain Brook, Ivy Point, most of those new subdivisions, Autumn Creek, that are part of that. If you actually look at Jonathan's Grill and you go north of Jonathan's Grill as a purchase point there, the orange, and just go straight up north, that takes you down Drakes Creek Road. So that's the current existing city limits versus the county limits and what Station 7, part of the territory that it would cover. The second question, a map showing the proposed service area outside of our city limits. I think that's kind of the same question. Could be answered in that map. Let's go back, Jason, to the original. Thank you. I think the map showing the proposed service area, we'll get into that further discussions. All the green, again, is outside the city. What's gray or white is currently city limits. So there's projections, 4 miles of coverage. Again, that would be a decision that you folks would have to make on what you're agreeing upon or what you would not agree upon. The next would be a population numbers within a 2, 4, 6 mile radius. Jason, if you'll go to the next slide, please. This shows you a 2-mile radius. Now, and the way that we pulled it up, it encompasses part of the city of Hendersonville that's not directly affected by Station 7. So basically, when you see the population number there at 4,760, that counts some of the citizens of Hendersonville. So when you see that 2-mile radius, that red dot in the center is where Station 7 is located, and that's 2-mile radius inside that purple circle. But the population is kind of difficult to guess or know without maybe going out and knocking on doors or maybe waiting on a survey. So when we pulled this up, that was the information it gave us, but the numbers are also including some of the current citizens of Hendersonville.
Is that excuse me, would that be a majority of that number would be residents of Hendersonville, or?
I would think quite a few of that, because Durham Farms has, what, 1,500 homes out there?
Well, not yet, but.
Eventually, they're heading that way, yes, sir. I would say at least half, if not a little more than half, would do that, because you've got Fountain Brook, you've got Ivy Point, although there's not a ton of houses out there. I would be, a safe bet to me would maybe be half of that would be city and half of that would be county. Next, please, Jason. This is going to be your 4-mile radius, and you see your population growth. Again, it gets bigger because it's including more of the city area. When we head south, just when we do this radius, it arbitrarily just incorporates that. It's not really anything that we can do about that, so the numbers are going to be kind of skewed from that. So you see that we're all the way down to Station 4's territory, imposing down on Station 3, and also heading towards Station 1's territory. So the numbers, again, are kind of skewed. Again, the best way to maybe get more positive numbers would be wait till the census is done, and then we might be able to get with the county and try to get a better number of what we're looking at. Jason, if you'll go next. This is your 6-mile radius. Again, your population almost doubles. But as you keep doing that, you notice the map keeps getting further and further. with a 6-mile radius, you see us encroaching on Goodlettsville. You also see us encroaching on White House and Goodlettsville, Millersville, and Gallatin. So obviously, to me, a 6-mile radius is a little too broad for us to try to reach out to. Now, we do have automatic aid agreements with Goodlettsville and Gallatin already in place. The difference in automatic and mutual aid is automatic aid is if Gallatin gets something and they're busy and they have all their engine companies tied up and they need help, they automatically call for us. Mutual aid would be where they actually physically have to pick up a radio or a telephone and call and ask for our help. And right now, that's what we get with Shackle Island. We don't have an automatic aid agreement with them. We have a mutual aid, if that makes sense. So your population's doubled in size, but again, you're encroaching on different cities and territories. I certainly don't feel like that we need to be encroaching in Goodlettsville. Now, we have the automatic aid with Goodlettsville, particularly for 12 stones, because it is kind of a toss-up territory there. We can certainly get there from Station 2 just about as quick, if not quicker, than Goodlettsville has or can get there. And that agreement is certainly on the table and been discussed the last couple of years. I think I've sent that to you, Mayor, and Mr. Ellis have agreed to that, if I'm not mistaken. Just for that 12 stones area. Nashville Fire protects Goodlettsville when they have mutual aid, but it would be kind of silly for Nashville to come all the way to 12 stones when we're right there at Free Hill Road and we can offer aid for that. So that kind of gives you the 6-mile radius. Jason, if you'll go ahead, please. The 9-mile radius, as you can see, we're smack dab in the middle of Gallatin, in the middle of White House. We're in the middle of almost all of Millersville and almost all of Goodlettsville. So my recommendation would not be to venture out 9 miles. As we get into the slide presentation, I'll give you what I feel like, in my opinion, that'll be your decision, but it'll be my opinion of what we should do as far as the radius. Next slide, please, Jason. The last one that you're looking at there is the 2.5, I think. Give me 2 seconds, please.
Chief, do you have an extra copy for
I sure do.
Chairman Cunningham?
That's okay.
Sorry. Share, okay.
I think what we're looking at here in the red, with the red Station 7 highlighted, I think that's 2.5 miles. And then the bigger circle goes out to 5 miles. Or I'm sorry, I told you a story. That's 4.5 miles and 9 miles. To me, that inner circle of the red, that 4.5 miles, would be sufficient for us to agree upon going outside of the city limits. We already have an agreement with the Board of Education that anything that goes on at Beach Elementary, Beach High School, or Hunter, that we respond out there. That's been in place for several years. And if there was any kind of incident that goes on out there, our fire marshals or our fire prevention office goes out with the state fire marshal and inspects those schools on a yearly basis. So we already offer those services to them, and that's an agreement that's been in place for some time. And this 4.5 miles, if you look, that incorporates Latimer Lane, but you'll see to the left of Shackle Island, it shows the beach schools. And that's right there, right across the station from New Shackle Island volunteers.
That would also include Long Hollow Church, right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Church.
Yes, sir. We go past Shackle Island, Latimer Lane. I think the last house fire that we went out there to that had the fatality was quite a bit deeper into Shackle Island's territory. I think that was on New Hope, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. But that was quite a ways out that we went on that fire.
Let's make this free-flowing committee, and so if you have any questions, let's just speak up. So right now, we have a mutual aid agreement. How far are we going out on a mutual aid agreement with New Shackle?
There is no boundaries. There's no established boundaries for that. If they call, I usually pick up the phone and ask how, and of course, we'll get into the PowerPoint presentation, but typically how that goes, we send an engine and a truck. Which right now the city is staffed with 6 engine companies and 2 trucks. We would send 1 engine company and 1 truck company to a particular call that they had, and then anything else that they would request or ask for would have to come through me, and then I would pick up the phone and either call the mayor or the COO, and I've done that every time that we've sent anybody out of the city.
But we don't send an engine or a truck when there's just a medical emergency, do we?
No, sir. My recommendation for that would be not to do that.
Okay.
I don't think that's an adequate use of our services to take the chance on reducing the opportunity to provide protection to the people in the city to run a medical call. That's strictly on the volunteer agency to do that. And we'll get into that too, the call types that I would recommend that you guys consider as part of this MOU.
Okay. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Lord, sir, it's probably been in place well over 20 years.
Yeah,
We've done
I
it ever since
remember
I've been on the department.
Right, I remember that. In fact, I remember them coming up there. In fact, I think it was at the old building. when they
Mr.
first
Bradley
came.
might be able to shed some light on that.
I don't know.
I don't know if he remembers when that was. I don't even know. It could have just been a gentleman's agreement. I don't know that we have anything in writing that says from this date forward, we'll do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I just remember them coming up. But anyway, my second question is, and the mayor or yourself or whomever knows this, how many times have we had to do this?
It's one of the questions that's coming up.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm not, okay.
I don't mind answering it, but if you.
I'll wait.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. That's
Question,
it.
Mayor?
Chief, how far outside our city limits is Shackle Island's district?
Oh, goodness. It goes all the way up to Tyree Springs, which is almost to White House.
Okay.
And I think ultimately what they're looking for is for, as I told Mr. Eckenroth, is they're looking for Gallatin Fire, White House Fire, Millersville Fire, and Gillisville Fire to chip in on expanding their areas. So we don't have to go so far out. So if we touch borders, that White House would cover the closest calls to them, if that makes sense for Shackle Island. Gallatin would do the same thing. Again, as you get out to that 9-mile radius, you see we're in the middle of White House, and I do not recommend that we do that. That would be a lot more of agreements that you'd have to work out with the city of White House, the city of Millersville. Now, if they need help, they're going to call and ask for it, and obviously that would be a phone call we would have. But if we go 9 miles, we're right smack dab in the city limits of other cities.
But I think the MOU is wanting us to extend into unincorporated areas. And those areas are incorporated, so I don't think that we're even considering going into incorporated areas that have their own fire service.
Correct.
I wouldn't think the county would.
But as I said, that 9 miles unfortunately puts you in those incorporated areas. So you would be short of that. But what they're wanting, again, is White House to also step up and say they're going to cover 4.5 miles. And what they're hoping for is our 4.5 miles and their 4.5 miles touch circles.
And say, if you look at the green on the map, you can see that there's a lot of white that goes up with green coming in, intermixing between it there. So
Yeah, anything that's
even
white or
you're
gray,
going to have
however you.
incorporated and unincorporated side by side all throughout this map, which might cover Gallatin, Gillisville, and
Anything
White
that's
House may stretch.
white or gray in that map is incorporated. Anything that's green is outside any city limits.
Okay.
Mayor, do you have anything else? Anybody else?
So is the MOU not only calling for this expansion by the new Station 7, but also by other stations as well?
So right now, because we have just mutual aid with them, Station 5 is the one that goes. The only reason that we're asking for 7, or the conversation started for 7, is, of course, that's closer to the Shackle Island territory. It would be silly for us to now draw 5 out from the hospital to send out to Shackle Island when 7's there. You always send the closest station to go with that.
Okay.
We would still have 5 engine companies to serve the rest of the city, and we do that on working house fires now. If we have a working incident and we've got 4 engine companies tied up, we take the 2 that we have, relocate them to have coverage on each end of town for medical calls or anything else, and then if we feel the need, then we bring in mutual aid from Gallatin or Gillisville or anybody else that serves with us in those capacities.
But the MOU envisions, doesn't it, if there is a need for, what's the station number on Saundersville Road?
6 is the one at Winston Hills.
So do you envision this MOU would require that station to respond as well, or only Station 7?
I think they're looking for anybody that touches their boundaries. So if you've got territory, we've gone to a couple of house fires out there with Shackle Island already in previous years. Nothing too recent, but in the last 10 years, we've worked a couple of house fires out there with Shackle Island.
Questions? Okay, proceed, please.
Okay, the next slide, I think that gets into the estimated number of calls within the city limits. I'm sorry, that's a polygon, I apologize, for the estimated population from Station 7, covering I think it's my eyes are failing me, 2 and 4 mile radius. And that's just a polygon from Station 7 because it kept incorporating the rest of the city, giving you kind of a false amount of numbers. So this is kind of more of a guaranteed number, but again, you see that we're encroaching on Millersville with that polygon, so that those numbers would even be decreased as well.
So, question, on Station 7, do you know what the city population is that you would expect that station to cover?
So when we get it built, we would have to go back to our zone maps and try to restructure who responds to what. So we feel like Station 7 could respond to the streets of Indian Lake, along with Station 5 and Station 6. We would take 3 out of that mix. Now, the truck company from Station 3 would still come because we always send our truck companies, and the truck company from Station 5 would go. But my idea, preliminary looking at it, is from Durham Farms back towards town to around Saundersville Road, and let that be the cutoff point for Station 7. And they'll back up Station 5, they'll back up Station 6 out on Saundersville Road, where most of your building is going to be occurring over the next few years.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So the estimated number of calls within the city limits, we're predicting right now about 7,600 calls for service. I can tell you my gut feeling looking at the month's coverage of calls that we've had so far, we're probably going to bust 8,000 inside the city this year. Whether that's still COVID related or whatever, we're going to probably hit 8,000 calls pretty easy. We ran 156 last week alone. So I think we had a month there that we ran 800 and something calls. So you do that times 12 months, that's 9,600 calls. I think a safe bet for us would be about 8,000 calls for service this year within the city limits. Any questions about that?
That's not all fire.
No, sir, that's,
Every
yes, sir.
falling out of bed, automobile accident, I hit a deer, they call the fire department.
Yes, sir. Any kind of
Everybody
public
got-
assist? Yeah, UTV in the park? Yes, sir. Next would be the estimated calls outside the city limits. We did like a 4-year stretch back. The average is about 8 calls a year outside the city limits. And that's not just for Shackle Island. That serves Gallatin. We've backed Gallatin up. We've backed Goodlettsville up, and we've also done mutual aid with Nashville Fire and Number 1. Wow. So those 8 calls a year is all that we're averaging getting outside the city limits.
So you wouldn't think the MOU, if it comes to an agreement, would increase significantly over that number of calls?
That's a difficult question to answer. Obviously, if they start growing up on Long Hollow Pike, density gets larger. Me and Mr. Eckenroth talked about that a little bit. Again, that's later in the PowerPoints for discussion. But certainly, depending on the growth that happens outside the city, you're going to substantiate the reason to think that you may have a higher call volume.
Mr. Chairman, that's one of the things I'm concerned about is that this almost gives license for the county to create higher density houses because their concern forever has been that you don't have solid fire protection out in the county. We would now eliminate one of those concerns, and some county commissioners would no longer feel the reservation against rezoning for higher density.
Yeah, I think that this MOU agreement would probably make it very unlikely for any requests for annexations, for new subdivisions. I think that that does that does diminish the attractiveness of being annexed. And I know that there's a lot of stuff. I talked to Phillips Builder, and they're starting a new subdivision right behind Beach High School, which would be included in this MOU, depending on how far out we go. So that is an implication that we have to consider. You know, how does this eliminate the desire for annexation?
I want to add to, what you're looking at in your pamphlet is different from what the slide is. We made some changes after we sent these off for print, so we're not trying to be confusing. We've got 8.3, I think, on your handout where it's 8 calls for service. So there'll be some different things on the slides that's not in your handout because we already sent it out to print.
Okay.
Mr. Eckenroth reminded me of that, so thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Proceed. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Please proceed, Chief.
The next question was projected calls for service. Obviously, we took it over a 2-year span as you requested, a 2, 4, 8, 16. It kind of doubled. We kind of did it on an average of 20%, roughly 20%. So it's gonna jump a couple of calls each year, is what we feel like based on the numbers that we currently had and what we worked that off of. So we figured 2 years it might go to 10, 4 years it might go to 12. But again, that's an open-ended question depending on what happens outside the city limits, and we don't. I don't have anything to say or do about that.
Please.
Scotty, the calls that you're getting outside.
Turn your mic on.
Jason, can you go to the next slide, please? Sorry.
Is it on? Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. The calls that you're getting right now for mutual aid outside the city limits, are they all for, how are they classified? Are they mostly for fire protection, or is it emergency services, or what kind of calls are they?
So most of the calls that we respond to that are mutual aid with our partners that touch in our community are house fires. Now, we have been asked to come in for some critical extrications out on Long Hollow Pike if it's involving some heavy machinery, a dump truck or an 18-wheeler. We have gone out on occasion for those, but most of the time, I'd say 95% of the time, it is for house fires. And a lot of times, we're not going to the scene. We're actually covering calls for them as they're tied up working their own house fire.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Jason, can you go back a couple of slides, please? Oh, where did it go to? I'm looking for the one that talks about staffing levels, Jason. Hold on. Oh, that's good. Let's go back. I'm sorry. I'm tripping you up there, Jason. Go back one more. So this is one of the things that me and Mr. Eckenroth talked about, and you guys have already brought a couple of those points up of factors that may affect calls for service. And obviously, the population growth would be one of those factors. The countywide population growth, not just in the city, but also outside the city. Obviously, as you grow, you're going to have increased traffic. And then, of course, zoning densities, as you guys were just discussing. So those are all considerations that we had in private conversations with Mr. Eckenroth before we come forward with that. That's probably one of those slides that's not in your handout that was come in after publication.
Mr. Chairman? Okay. Thank you. Scotty, the other question that I had was, if we enter the mutual aid agreement with the county to cover additional areas, would that have to be an increase in staff or equipment for Firehouse 7, or would that remain pretty constant?
So that's part of the slides that we're getting into as far as conversation. I don't mind answering that now.
Oh, okay. All right.
But it gets into staffing levels current and what we see coming in the future.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I guess perhaps Keith Free could help on talking with the county about local population growth in those areas. I was just thinking maybe he could. Keith, do you have anything to add? Do you know about the growth in the county in these areas, development? Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. These areas that are north of Hendersonville, that are out in the county, some of those already have subdivisions that are approved, and some have started construction, and others probably soon will be. I don't know what the likelihood of additional growth within that general area that's defined. Most of that area is pretty much a little bit less than an acre a lot is the existing zoning. So any other zoning, like when we look at zoning and the densities that are allowed by right out in those areas, most of those areas are just a little bit less than an acre per lot. Otherwise, they'd have to submit a plan development to the county and get that approved, and then that could mean more population.
So are there any plans for any industrial parks that you're aware of, or large tracts for business purposes?
No, not that I'm aware of, or commercial related things out in those areas.
Okay.
Mostly just residential, but I'm not aware of any newer residential developments that are eyeing that area. I'm sure they are, but I'm not aware of any that have submitted. We do keep a track of what's going on in the county, that area of the county, as well as this side of Gallatin as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, Chief Bush, for
No, it's fine.
interrupting your
No worries.
presentation.
Anything else about the factors that may influence? Okay, Jason, can you go to the next one, please? We've already discussed the projected calls for service. The next one, please. Staffing levels in the city. Currently, right now, each shift, which we have 3 shifts, there's 37 personnel per shift. A typical fire or fire alarm or any incident that requires multi-companies, we send 3 engines and 2 trucks in the city limits. So you catch an alarm at the hospital or a smoke scare at the hospital, we send 3 engines, 2 trucks until we get some kind of confirmation of what's going on. If we get a call and it's an alarm and then they call back and say there's nothing to it, the primary company still runs emergency traffic. All the secondary ones just move in that direction, non-emergency. Then we have a division chief and a battalion chief that also are part of that 37. On any working incident that we have, house fire, commercial, initially we have 17 total staff. ISO typically likes for you to have anywhere from 20 to 21 on the fire ground at one time to get optimal points for staffing levels. So that's currently what we run with in the city right now. Any questions about that?
That's 17 staff per station.
No, sir. It's 37 divided between 6 stations. You've got 2 stations that are multi-company that have an engine company and a truck company. Then we have all the outlying stations. Station 3 and 5 have an engine and a truck. Station 6 has an engine company and an ambulance. Station 3 has an ambulance. 1 has an ambulance. 2 is just an engine company, and then Station 5 is an engine company and a truck company.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman? Thank you. Scotty, the firehouse that we're building, the new firehouse 7, are we going to have a bay for an ambulance in that one as well as like in 3? Like in 5?
I made that offer to EMS. They have positioned one at Shackle Island Volunteer Department, and they said the call volume they have right now does not necessitate putting an ambulance there.
Okay. Will we have an room for expansion if we need to?
We do have a potential blowout wall on Station 7 for future growth, yes.
Okay. I just have, I remember what happened at Station 5, and it cost us like an arm and a leg.
$600,000 back in 2016.
I know, and we budgeted $250 for it. I distinctly remember that. Thank you.
To follow up on that question, but according to the data that you're presenting us, you don't anticipate needing to expand Station 7?
No, so the only reason I would want to expand it is, like I said, and I think in response would be sooner or later we're going to have to buy another truck company and have one in reserve, again, to get some ISO points, and we could use that blowout wall to put that truck company as a reserve truck company at that station.
Okay.
Any more questions about that slide? Okay, next one, please. So then we start discussing, I think your question was staffing levels if we answer calls within the city and the proposed county area. Again, we have 37 people per shift if we're fully loaded. But you got to remember, we have Kelly days, we have vacation, we have sick time, we have folks that are in school or in training. So that 37 is not an accurate number. You won't have 37 people every day. Typically, what runs a shift is we have 8 pieces of equipment, 6 engine companies and 2 trucks, and the minimum staffing for that would be 3 people, so 24. So we have the ability to have 13 extra people on a shift, but obviously with double Kelly days, again, with sick leave, vacation, training, you never have 37 people on a shift at any time. Then you count your 2 division chiefs, or your division chief and your battalion chief. So anything outside the city, as I spoke earlier, we only send one engine company and a truck company, and either a division chief or a battalion chief. I don't like my folks going out of the city without a supervisor being there in case something was to happen or go wrong. We have one of our supervisors with them to communicate back to the city if there's something going wrong and they need some extra help. So basically, the initial response that we would send outside the city is only 7 personnel. 3 on the engine, 3 on the truck, and 1 supervisor. And as I said before, any request for more than that, the phone call comes to me, and then I immediately call the mayor or the COO and ask for permission to send anybody else outside the city. Okay. Any questions about that slide? Next one, please. So we talk about what is enough staffing. I think this kind of gears towards what Ms. Arlene was asking. To open Station 7, we can certainly take 12 folks and move to Station 7 and open it without any more personnel. But when you do that, it's going to cut us lean with staffing levels. So obviously, now you've gone from 28, you'll have 7 engine companies and 2 truck companies. You'll have to have 27 people as a minimum. So that 37 that was actually 35 because you have 2 supervisors that don't ride equipment. You're now down to 8 people, and double Kelly days drops you to sick, vacation time, and we try to protect for an illness or something like that so it doesn't cost overtime. So we only allow a certain amount of people off. We put somebody on standby, which means they have to come to work, and if we have enough staffing and they're on standby vacation, then we let them go home, just to try to protect the overtime so we're not costing extra money for, I guess, sick leave. My point with that being was we'll run the shift lean, which can increase the need for overtime. You start thinning the staffing out, it's going to reduce the number of people. We're still going to have just 17 people on the fire ground. It's going to reduce the opportunity to have more staff on the ground, which is always a concern for us. As you can see, more staff creates a safer level of operations, whether it's a commercial fire or a house fire. We get more rest for our folks. Typically, right now, we're trying to force folks into rehab so we're not killing them, forcing them into things that they're exhausted from, because if you've never done it, 20 to 30 minutes in that gear in an air pack is strenuous work. So it's really going to cut us lean. Now, we can always bring another engine company up within the city, but if we do that, then again, you're cutting short on another territory. Expectations of service, leaner staffing on fire grounds does not help our ISO ratings. As I said, I think it's 20 or 21 that ISO gives you maximum points for having staffing on a fire ground. And by moving these 12 folks out there, you're not going to help those numbers any.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Arlene?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Next, please. So, as we spoke earlier about call types outside the city, these are my recommendations. Again, only recommendations. I'm not saying that's what we should or. I'm saying it's what my opinion is. Working house fires or commercial fires, motor vehicle accidents involving entrapment that they need help extricating people from, any kind of hazardous materials call, and or swiftwater or drowning incidents where we're required to bring in our special operations folks and send them out there. We've had to do that a couple of times with rainfall when there were some areas outside the city that were getting rising waters. We sent some of our swiftwater folks out there. But that's minimal. Again, I can't predict that, but I would say that's probably one of those 8 times a year that we send mutual aid outside the city.
Is this consistent with the mutual aid agreement that we have, these categories?
Yes, sir. They don't really, from what I understand, what I remember from the MOU, they don't really get into call types. As we talked earlier, my recommendation is not to run Ms. Smith with a headache, is to allow the volunteer agency to cover those calls.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Pardon me, Chief, you
Yes,
said
sir.
something about entrapment. What about in a house fire here in the city if we have an entrapment? I know you sent out quite a bit of personnel to a next door neighbor to my mom's house. at 12 o'clock at night when we had an entrapment in that house.
So anytime that we have a confirmed possible entrapment in a house fire, or we have got a rescue situation, I've instructed my supervisors to go ahead and bring up another engine company. You have to remember, it's mandated by law that you have a RIT team, which is a rapid intervention team. Anytime you have a team of 3 inside of a house fire or a commercial fire, you have to have that many folks outside ready to go in case something happens. If you have 6 folks in it, you have to have 6 folks outside ready to go in case of a rescue situation, if there's a down firefighter or anything like that. So that's mandated by law that we have to have a RIT team. If something was to happen, it would not bode well for the city if we didn't have those RIT teams in place.
There were 2 people entrapped in that fire, and they did a great job getting them out, even though one of the people did expire at the scene. Just trying to locate that person was a job in itself.
Yes, sir. They had a lot of fire that night, and they were lucky enough to rescue one of the 2. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions about that slide? Next one, please, Jason. This goes back to the facility needs for future at Station 7. The potential need to add the 3rd bay using the blowout wall to house the reserve truck, as I spoke about. That would be an option, but that's probably a year or 2 on down the road, if not a little bit further. That would be up to you folks to make that decision of when the trucks need to be replaced. One of them's a 2011, the other one's a 2012. The station itself is designed for a 2-company assignment. What I would like for, once 7 is done, we don't have the staffing to do it immediately, but if we get those 15 through a safer, I would like to staff our special operations vehicle and place it at that station and put extrication equipment on it. That would keep one of our truck companies in the city, and that company could always roll with that engine company because they're going to train together. They're going to know the inner workings of each other. We do it together as a group, but it also gives them the opportunity to stay together, and we still have 2 truck companies in the city to provide service for the city's citizens.
So maybe if the city does agree to a memo of understanding, to a contract, and maybe we can stipulate that if the station has to be enlarged because of growth, that the county will be responsible for paying for that expansion.
That's certainly up to you guys. I'll reiterate the fact, as I've said several times, the county ambulance service has been in our fire stations for over 30 years and never paid a dime. That means they sleep there, they eat there, they do everything there. We got 3 of their ambulances in our firehouses, and they've never paid a dime. And certainly, to me, that should have been a stipulation as we did the blowout wall at Station 5, but that was out of my control. I was not part of that.
Okay.
But I certainly feel like the county should have contributed to that as well.
Okay.
Just my opinion. Any questions about that slide? Next one, please, Jason. This is just a little
Mr.
kind of,
Chairman?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. If we do that additional bay from the get-go on the fire hall that we're building now, how much extra would it be?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Marshall, you can help clarify on this. I think they're going to put it out right now with the bare bones that we've cut it to. We're still looking at more money than what's budgeted.
I understand that.
But as far as the cost right now, I would be amiss to try to give you a number. I think they're going to put it out to bid for the opportunity to go ahead and do that bay now. And then the bidders will have the opportunity to add that as I guess, an addendum. I think it's the discussion that's been on the table right now.
So we're going to have it with and without?
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is that not correct, Marshall?
Yes, that's correct. We'll have it as an alternate bid item, so we can see the cost of just that one item.
The next slide, if everybody's ready to move on, that's just kind of a little bit of information about us as an agency. Our total annual budget's around $12 million, a little short of that. We have 6 stations that serves. That's roughly $2 million per station. And of course, the equipment needed for Station 7, we've got the engine as part of the capital outlay note, and then we already have the special operations vehicle here. Now we just don't have the staff to put on it. So there would not be any need for more equipment. The engine's being looked at right now. We're trying to come up with a design. That's part of the capital outlay note, $800,000 for that. And then the special operations vehicle is already here. We got that on a grant. back about 4 years ago.
But 2 million is the annual cost for Station 7 fully staffed.
No, sir, that's currently, right now, we got 6 stations and about a $12 million budget. That's
Okay,
$2 million per station right now. You add 7 to the mix, it's going to go up arbitrarily a sum.
but per fire hall, it's $2 million a year. That's the average cost, and that's what you would anticipate Station 7 being, the average cost, $2 million a year?
Probably so, yes, sir.
Okay,
That's a rough estimate now.
okay,
Things can change with that.
okay.
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
The 2 million a year, does that include the maintenance on the building, the insurance, the personnel?
It does not include, I would not think that it would include the personnel. I would have to defer to Robert on that. And that would be something we'd probably have to do a little bit of homework and come back to you with. We just basically took the $12 million budget that we currently have roughly, and the 6 stations, we just kind of wanted to give you a kind of an overview. We didn't really get down in the weeds about personnel versus equipment. I mean, I can tell you a fire engine's $450,000 to $500,000.
Yeah, but that's a one-time cost.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
So,
just the maintenance of it would be a annual cost.
correct.
Personnel, the benefits, the building, the maintenance on insurance, all that other boring stuff.
So yes, I think that's pretty accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to clarify that. In my own mind, I think I heard that right. And I'll look at Robert because he's the numbers guy. $2 million a year to run a fire hall operation in this city. That's staffing, electricity, water, maintenance, insurance, light bulbs.
People?
Well, personnel, yeah.
For just operations and non-salary, it's more about 1.2 million to run everything now. So divide that by, how many stations? I'm sorry. Divide that by 6. So we're getting around 200,000 range per fire hall for operations only. Now you add in salaries, that's where you get this $12 million number.
Okay, so to run a fire hall, to run fire hall number 1 in this city is $2 million a year. Run fire hall number 2 is $2 million a year.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. It's all encompassing.
I have another question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I think Mr. Ekenroth wants to expand on that.
Yeah, if you don't mind. The reason that we added this slide was to show that there is some type of every station you add is going to add some type of cost. So we just said, hey, what's our total budget? It's 12 million. How many stations do we have? Some are bigger, some are smaller, some staff more. But we're going to add another station. So as the previous slide that the chief showed, it's going to run our numbers a little lean. So probably a recommendation is going to come, let's add some staff. We're going to need a unit. We're going to have maintenance on a vehicle out there. We're going to have more insurance. So we're just going to have more. So we just took the average of what our budget's 12 million. We divided it to show that there's a correlation between a station and the cost. And this is the correlation. Now, there's going to be some economies of scale going to another station because we're able to use some of the personnel we have now. But it's just to show that it's not just a one-time cost. So the purpose of this is you're not going to build it for $2 million and then be done. It's going to affect the budget year after year. And that's really the point of this slide, to say there's a cost per station. It's going to affect us annually. Thank you.
Do you have another question?
No, sir.
Okay. Very good.
Jesse answered my questions.
He's pretty good about that. So, next slide, please, Jason. One of the questions was our current ISO rating. As you all know, in 17, I think it was 17, beginning of 18, we were reclassified as a 3X. After Station 7 is built, we don't feel that the potential to lower our rating will help. Adding increased staffing and reduced response times in that area will help considerably. So we think, my idea is once we have 7 built, we get the staffing out there, we certainly can call ISO back in here. They randomly pick calls, fires, things like that, that you go on response times, and that's what they factor in as part of their ISO rating. I think once 7's out there and we reduce that response time by in half, if not more, that we certainly could be looking. We missed a 2 by 5 points last time. I feel pretty strongly about putting that station out there, and then if we get that SAFER grant, we get to staff that special operations vehicle, I certainly see us hitting a 2X. That's just my prediction. I do think it can be lowered with the location of that station.
But the real million-dollar question is, by expanding into the county, will that lower our ISO rating?
No, the only thing I will say about that is if we had an automatic aid agreement. The trouble with automatic aid agreements is when you do ISO and they bring those folks in, your training records have to be up to date and up to speed, and you have to train with those individuals on a quarterly basis. I'm not concerned with Gallatin's. We know they keep good training records. Some other agencies keep training records. I'm not sure where Shackle Islands is, so I don't know that it would behoove us to enter into an automatic aid agreement. That would be a question I would have to talk to Chief Bowers and let him provide me with some data of record keeping to know if it would behoove us to enter an automatic aid agreement.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the ISO rating is driven by response time.
It's part of it. Water
Okay.
supply, as you saw, Gallatin got a 2X, but they own their own utility district. That plays a huge role in that. The ECC now is online. It's been online for a few years, and they've got some things in place that they didn't have in place before that help Gallatin, and I certainly feel like it'll also help us. Having a combination radio dispatch center, and then, of course, the radio that we can simply talk to Gallatin Fire can talk to us, will also afford us some points as well.
So will the ISO rating in the unincorporated areas that the county wants us to include, will they mirror the ISO rating of this city?
That's what that 3X is for the unincorporated areas.
All right.
The 3 is for the people inside the city limits. The
Okay.
3X is for the folks outside the city limits,
Okay. Okay. So it would be the same.
if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Next.
And I'll make sure that tomorrow or the next day I'll reach out to ISO, but that's the way I understand that rating. Is anybody that's outside the city limits gets that 3X rating.
Because if we expand it to 4 miles out, or 4.5 miles, the outer perimeter of our area, new area, would probably be over 10 minutes, would it?
It wouldn't take us 10 minutes to get to beach, no,
Oh,
sir.
okay.
I wouldn't think so, not from Station 7. Currently, without Station 7, you're looking at a 9.5 to 10-minute response time from Station 5 to get to Durham Farms or get to Fountain Brook. And, you know, there's so many factors that play into that. Traffic, time of day, there's a lot of things. Now, you also, on down the road, that corridor is going to be connected from Durham Farms to Long Hollow Pike as well.
Okay.
Any other questions? Next slide, please. And then the last question, I think, or one of the last questions was, if Station 7 is not built, would it affect our ISO rating?
Well, it's going to be built. We've already decided that. So that's a moot question, I think.
Well, I'm just trying to answer what you wanted. So I don't think it'll affect us. We'll still maintain the 3X, but it will not improve our ISO rating. And I think that's the ultimate goal of our agency, is to provide the highest level of protection and to try to force the city into a lower ISO rating. I think that's one of our number one goals, and I've not hidden from that at all since I've been chief. I think the more we drive that down, the better we're going to look, and the better it's going to help the people in the city.
Any questions?
Just one question. Chief, do you think that if we enter into an agreement with the county, that they'll allow us to pick and choose automatic aid and mutual aid
That would
areas
be
that we
up,
cover?
that would be up to you folks. Right now, they do not call us for medical calls. So I don't see that they would start doing that with an agreement. I just don't see that. We just have a gentleman's agreement now, and we're already going out 8 times a year. To me, in my opinion, again, we're getting X amount of money, whatever that amount is, to go outside 8 times a year to provide assistance. And it's not just Shackle Island. We do it for number 1. We do it for Gallatin. We do it for Goodlettsville, and they reciprocate. They give it back to us. when we get super busy. We've had Gallatin and Goodlettsville both in here. We've had Shackle Island in here with a dump tank on a house fire out on Rolling Hills where we have hydrant supply that's not very good. So, I mean, we ask for mutual aid sometimes too from those folks.
Thank you.
A comment?
Yes, sir.
So, in summary, we are committed, I think as a board, we're committed to building Station 7. Station 7, whether we have a mutual aid agreement or not, will still cost us about $2 million a year. Is that correct?
Give or take some, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
There's
That's-
always things that can make that go up, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Have you looked at the MOU, Chief?
I have. It's been a couple of weeks, but I have, yes, sir.
In the second whereas, I want to ask you how you define this term that's in the MOU. It says that the city, meaning Hendersonville, shall provide fire and emergency support services in the unincorporated areas of the city. How do you define emergency support services? Would that be medical support?
I do not look at that as support. Support services to me is providing them support in a working house fire or commercial fire. I don't see supporting them. To me, supporting means I'm going to support you in whatever you're already in touch of doing. Okay. So if it's an extrication, I'm going to support you in that role. If it's a house fire, I'm going to support you in that role. I do not think that it means that we're going to start answering EMS calls.
Probably need to clarify it.
I would strongly advise against not doing that.
Yes, good point. So,
Comment, sir?
yes, go ahead.
If I can. It's along the lines of what Alderman Robertson was talking about, and you had it in, I was looking for the slide of basically what you said mutual aid would be. It would be encapsulated, accident, somebody's encapsulated, couldn't get out of a vehicle.
Entrapment, yes, sir.
So that would be all part of mutual aid, but if you go on down here, it says the county and the city have agreed to cooperate in good faith in fulfilling the terms of the MOU. Teamwork between the parties is paramount. The unforeseen difficulties or questions shall be resolved by negotiation between the county and the city. So we're talking about negotiating on the front end. I'm sorry. Just, somebody throw something. I'm hard-headed. If it goes by, I may look up. So we have the opportunity to clarify that before we go any farther. But on some original conversations that I was in, I know you were in too, that what we had talked about, the funding from the county would go to help us offset the building of this fire hall. And what they expected, and whoever that is, it's county commissioners and whoever was in that conversation, was fire, basically. Because one of the things that I mentioned to a couple of our commissioners is we didn't want to be, if Ms. Smith rolled out of bed, that would not be a Fire Hall 7 call. Although we would do that out of the goodness of our heart, and probably have done that before, but that would not be, and that would save some of that. Well, we'll just kind of fold our hands and let Fire Hall 7 take care of everything. So I think that's important to discuss that on the front end, but I think we've already started that discussion on exactly what that means. We just need to follow it up along with Mr. Bradley and Mr. Eckenworth, the mayor, and whoever from the county, and nail that down if we decide to do this. Thank you.
Any other questions for Chief?
We've got one more slide, if I'm not mistaken, please, Jason.
Well, we have a question from
I'm sorry.
Alderman Petrelli.
Yes, ma'am.
You'll have to come up to the mic because it's being recorded.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. So I'm going to follow up on your question for the MOU. So I guess the way I read this is that we are never the lead agency in this situation.
That's correct.
So my interpretation is whatever agency is called, it's up to their discretion to then contact us before we even deploy?
Correct. That's the way it is right now. We don't ever show up until they make that phone call and ask for us to show up.
So we would never leave that station until,
Unless we went to an automatic aid agreement, and then
you
then
would
it
go
would be an automatic response.
every time.
Well, is that what they're asking for, an
It's not
automatic?
mentioned.
Okay.
It just says an MOU, memorandum of understanding. They don't really get into mutual aid or automatic aid. They don't really discuss that.
Which is why I think this is kind of a stronger or more, a little bit more broad-based I don't know how to better say that.
Well, I mean, I'll say it.
Go ahead.
My opinion is they brought something to the table for the city leaders and the COO to evaluate and counter back with what y'all think is adequate in an agreement. I think that's just what happens. I mean, that's part of negotiations. We bring you something to the table, and it's your job to either agree to it or come up with whatever parameters you're willing to work within. That's just the way I see it, and I may be totally wrong, and that's just kind of how I view that.
Personally, I like the MOU. That's just me. Thank you. Thank you.
Excuse me, Vice Mayor Petrelli, I referred to you as Alderman. I don't want to overlook your promotion, I guess, or your status.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you
Mayor,
for
did
taking
you
my
have
question.
a
Sure.
comment?
Chief Bush and Alderman Brown sort of hit the nail on the head, is that for years, the city mayors have been talking to the county about the services that we provide, and then suddenly the county's interested in helping us one-time cost for Fire Hall number 7. We're not going to have a conversation. We're not going to avoid the other conversation we've been having for 4 years just to talk about one-time cost. We feel like we should throw it all in there together, and we have an opportunity to right a wrong, I guess we should say.
Any other questions for Chief Bush? Okay.
I have one more, and I'll keep it brief.
Okay.
Sorry. It's a
Okay.
comment. When you built station number 6,
I did not build that, but I remember it was 2009.
it didn't have the extra bay on it, is that correct?
Station 5. did
It was
not.
5.
Yes, ma'am.
So you guys were here, so 5. So how much more did that cost to add on a bay in comparison to the actual construction of the fire hall? Do you recall?
Well, look, the total cost of the add-on, the addition, we budgeted originally $250,000, and the total cost of it was $600,000.
Just for the bay?
Yes, just for that addition.
What year was that? Do you recall?
I believe it was 2013, 2014.
I've been chief for 6 years. It fell in my lap my very first year to finish that project out.
Was it about 2014 or
2015.
Okay.
I guess all that to say, I mean, I know we're always going to make fiscally tight decisions, but Keith might weigh in on this. It does lessen, lower your construction costs if you build it, in my mind, all at once. Like if you really think, hey, we're going to come back in 5 or 10 years and build that out, it's going to be a pretty high factor compared to the original cost of the building. Now, if it was 30 years out, that's different. But if we were thinking about a bay extension in the next 5 to 10 years, do you think it would be financially advantageous to do the bay now?
We can't hear you.
Yes, probably something with the addition that we're talking about of this bay, of the size that it is. If you were talking about doing something 3 to 5 years from now, potentially, that would probably cost quite a bit more to do it at that date than to do it now. If it's something further out, then that's a little bit different story. But if it's something we're really seriously considering in the near term, then looking at coming up with whatever that extra cost is, would be reasonable to consider, especially for this limited square footage that we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. All right. What I would like to do now, I think that there's been a lot of talk about the MOU. But as far as I'm concerned, or of my own knowledge, I don't think that a committee, correct me if I'm wrong, that a committee or the board has said, we want to move forward. We assumed that we were moving forward, but I think it's appropriate for this committee to make a motion. And I've got a question before we consider that motion. I would like for the mayor to chime in. I would assume that you would be, as mayor, the negotiator for the city with the county mayor. I mean, it mentions that in the MOU. Mm-hmm. So do you have a game plan if this committee votes to move forward with negotiations? Do you have an idea of how you would like to proceed and the timeline that you would like to proceed?
I think probably the best thing to do would be to have me, Jesse, Chief Bush, yourself as the chairman of the Capital Projects Committee, maybe another alderman, maybe Public Safety Chairman, put together what we our first offer, should we say, of the county. And one of the things I'd also like to do is, let's put a deadline of it that we finalize that in a month. It doesn't have to necessarily be. I don't think we have to name a committee to this. I mean, obviously, I'm suggesting we choose some people that are elected officials. But at the end of the day, I think it's myself taking a proposal to the county. So what I'm looking for is input from those people, as well as anybody who wants to give me input, to be honest with you. And then I'll come back here in 3-4 weeks, tell you all what my suggestions are, and y'all can make some additional ones and go from there.
Okay, comments?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Chairman Brown, please.
I would make a motion that the committee of the mayor, the public safety chairman, the fire chief, or COO, and the capital projects chairman get together, fill in the blanks on this form, bring that back within a month to this board after some discussions have maybe been had with the finance chair and the commissioners or whoever that needs to happen with, and try to move forward with it.
Okay, I think that's a proper motion.
And I'll second that motion. And what I'd like to also add, I don't know if I could add this or not, but just maybe I have a comment, that we need to inform the county what our intention is, how we're going to proceed,
I'm happy to do that.
okay?
I'll do that.
With the timeline and all that. Thank you.
I just added it.
Thank you.
Without objections, it's been amended, and
Thank you.
both the sponsor and the second have agreed to that. So we have a motion now. Does everyone understand the motion? So I guess just as explanation, so I guess, Mayor, the next step is in your ball
Okay.
court? Right, we have to vote, but after we, okay, let's vote first. So all in favor, does this have to be can it be a voice? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say yes. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? No? Okay, it's unanimous. So I think we've kind of got our marching orders. So I guess the mayor, my thought would be the ball is in your court to form the committee that you need. And I'm sure you're going to be using John Bradley, our city attorney, in that as well. And so after the staff, this committee comes up with a recommendation, then we'll call an emergency meeting of this board to approve it and take it to the county. In the meantime, do you agree to contact Mayor Holt?
I'll do it.
And tell him that we are proceeding?
I'm going to see him tomorrow.
Okay, excellent. Any other discussion on this matter?
If I can, please, I do want to make a point of clarification. If you go to the fourth, on the MOU, if you go to the fourth paragraph, it states, whereas the parties have an interest in creating an MOU and a mutual aid agreement. So it specifies mutual aid in this. But again, I think that's just the original, here it is. It's up to you folks to, as the mayor said, create a different negotiation and go back.
Okay.
But it does state that, where I said earlier in the day that it did not state that.
The very first paragraph or first sentence says, and mutual aid agreement. I mean, it's right there.
Like I said, it's been a little while since I've read it, so I
right, it's the very
apologize
first
for that,
line.
and I just want to make sure I cleared that up.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, staff. All right, moving right along. The next item on the agenda is just for discussion. I would not suggest a motion on this, but we have had, and hopefully on your desk, or Mr. Eckenroth, we have some information. The Public Works Department, a Public Works Committee has had a presentation on LED lights for the city. And so you have the proposal by PATH, hopefully in front of you. You also have, Keith, would you go back and check in my box? I think we've got enough for these for every member of the committee, the PATH presentation. The sheet that you have in front of you is an analysis by NES. Our streetlights are served by both NES and Cumberland Electric. And so what this analysis is, we didn't want to just accept this consultant's estimate of savings based upon LED streetlights. So we got an estimate from NES as well. I think they're more of an independent determinant of the cost. And help me, Marshall, where is it I'm looking for on the estimated savings? Yeah. Can you open it, Keith, and pass it out? Thank you. I don't. I've got it on. The current, this is by NES, it's showing on here, down at the bottom. The current bill that the city pays for streetlights is $266,000 a year. Again, that's the third bullet on the bottom of the page. The current bill is $266,000. NES estimates that if we go with LED streetlights, as PATH is suggesting here, that our bill would drop to $121,000 a year for charges for streetlights. So you can see it's a pretty large drop in the price of what we pay annually to NES for streetlights. So right off the bat, it looks like a no-brainer that this is a wise way to go. Marshall, do you want to explain briefly, and we don't have a whole lot of time, the investment charge and the energy charge, those two different charges?
The energy charge obviously is kind of what it is that the power. Sorry, the energy charge is kind of what it states. Is the energy we use to power the light. We obviously have to pay for all the lights in Hendersonville. We have high pressure sodium, and there is a cost to power those lights. Obviously, once we convert to LED, there is less of a cost for that same energy, and that's reflected in those numbers. The investment charge is just the charge for that light itself, for the maintenance of the light. If it's damaged, if it needs to be replaced for some reason, that there's a value that they assign to those fixtures, and that's what that number represents. But obviously for LED, there's less maintenance and there's less power involved for those lights.
So that's by going on the NES numbers, that's about $140,000 a year savings by going to LED lights. So I've thrown a lot of information at you. I guess if this committee is interested in moving forward and hearing a specific presentation by PATH, and PATH is just completed, I think, in Goodlettsville, right? They've just done Goodlettsville. We can have that at a future meeting. Everybody wants to know, well, what would be the cost of this? Yeah, we're saving $140,000, but they have estimated a turnkey cost of $2.3 million to do this. So it's not cheap to do that. It's a big ticket item.
Can we do it incrementally? I'm sorry, I didn't have my speaker on. Would we be able to do it incrementally instead of all at once?
That would be a good question for PATH. I would think so, but I don't know. I would think so.
Because
We could also allow NES to change them out going forward and say every time we put in a new light, it's LED. And if we wanted to start selecting areas, we could actually take an area and say, hey, we'd like to change those out. But as a friend of mine who works for NES said, Nick Thompson, he said there is a cost associated with taking out and replacing a light before its life has been, before it's worn itself out, basically. They have a a cost associated with that light fixture, and you would still be charged for that light fixture in totality, so. Anyways, to answer your question, yes, you can, but it's still gonna cost you some money. Just wouldn't be one lick at $2.3 million.
Or you have the floor?
Did you have a question?
I do.
Okay.
And this is, I think, out of ignorance more than anything else, but to me, it'd be a good question. $266,000 a year per light in the city for every single pole that goes down this street is $266,000 a year. That's what the chairman said. That's what I understood him saying.
So we have one account where we pay all our street lights for NES, and like for the Indian Lake, Main Street, in my neighborhood we have wood poles. There's lights on those wood poles.
One sitting at the end of my driveway. What I want to know is that does not cost me $266,000.
No.
What's that one light pole cost?
Individually, what that is, that one light cost the city?
Yeah, I'm just, $266,000, $152,130 investment charge. Okay, I think I understood that. $114,000 energy charge. That per light per year. Where's that in our budget? I just got done flipping through the budget, and if we've got that much money invested in lights, there should be a multi-million-dollar line item in there someplace. You got the answer to that?
It's $75.22 per light.
Yeah.
Based
How
on
much?
these, $75.22 per light, based
Okay.
on 158,128, the annual energy charge divided by 2,102 light fixtures.
So my light poles cost me how much, Pat?
$75.22.
Okay,
A year.
a year.
So I don't want to belabor the point. I know the mayor is interested in looking at this proposal. A lot of cities are doing it. So I guess I just want to kind of get a feel from the committee. Is this something that we want to explore in more depth and have someone from PATH to come? Or is this something that we're not interested in pursuing right now?
And one other thing, the amount of that would be $6.26 per light fixture per month, bringing it down to the monthly figure point.
I think the timing is pretty poor for this. I mean, we're trying to do the recycling, we're trying to do maybe tornado sirens, now this. I mean, I think we're just so overwhelmed.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea and a great investment, especially if we could do it incrementally over the course of maybe 5 years. But I don't think I have an appetite for this right, not at over $2 million.
Yeah.
That's just my,
And
looking at the budget, the way we're looking at the budget right now.
And I think that it might be possible in the future, with all of the stuff coming down from Washington on climate change, it may be possible in the future that we could use some federal grants or federal monies for
Absolutely.
this.
That was going to be my second comment.
So, all right, any other comments? Okay. All right, so we'll just table this for right now. Table it
I
and,
like this spreadsheet.
okay. All right, we've got 6 minutes before the workshop starts. Marshall, I've just got a couple questions on the status of projects, of capital projects. First of all, I want to ask you, what is the status of light synchronization?
We are hoping to have the finalized plans in the coming weeks from our consultant. Once we have that, we're going to make a submission back to TDOT for their concurrence, and then from there, we will rebid the project.
Okay.
I'm going to say in 3 or 4 weeks, we'll have final plans, and then take those back to TDOT for final approval.
Okay. Well, set on that consultant hard.
Yes.
Set on him hard and push him every day. Have somebody, you ready today? Because, yes, Vice Mayor, you have to go up here.
Sake of our citizens, Can you just explain for the public why we're putting it out for rebid? Thank you.
Yes, several months ago, we bid the project, and TDOT came back to us when we tried to get their concurrence, and that they said that, we had equipment and materials that were outside either our right-of-way or their right-of-way that we were trying to improve. And so that was the first time they had made that comment. This obviously project has been going on for a long time. And so we had to go back and survey all those components to ensure that they were inside a right-of-way, and then we could improve those with federal funding. And so we've done that. We've gone back to the consultant to update the plans with that information. And so that's what we're waiting on now, is for those plans to be finalized and to go back to TDOT with that information for concurrence. It was unforeseen. We have never experienced this before, and we're surprised about the comment, but nonetheless, we're making those changes and getting the plans finalized.
Mr. Chairman, might want to say one thing about that? In some of those pieces of property intersections, we've been utilizing for over 30 years in the city of Hendersonville with no issues, none whatsoever, until, and it even passed the first review from the state, and then they went back for a second review is when it came up for question. So, there you go. That's where red light synchronization is at.
Yeah, well, I would like the citizens to know that we're pressing hard on this issue, but we do need the state to give final approval before we move forward. So we'll continue to monitor, work with the staff on that, Mr. Ekenroth, that's a priority, I think, not only for this committee, but for the board as a whole. Any other project updates? The only other one I wanted to mention was at the Saundersville road and railroad track, the staff is working on improving that intersection by turn lanes and stuff. So what's the status on that?
We are working with TDOT to find out if we can move forward with just the addition of the pavement markings on those turn lanes. We realize that a sign is needed as well, a big overhead structural sign, but no, that will take several months to get. But we wanted to know, we're working with them to try to get an agreement in place to move forward with just the pavement marking, that we can do that very quickly as compared to installing a sign. So we don't have an answer on that yet, but staff is working hard to get that answered very soon.
And the last, I'm sorry, you through?
Yeah, I'm through.
And the last item, have you made any progress on payment for straightening out Old Shackle and Walton Ferry? Has the state given any, you were going to try to make it in 2 installments?
Yes, I've asked that question, and I haven't gotten an official response, but the initial conversation does not appear that we'll be able to make that in 2 payments. It appears that it'll have to be one lump sum payment. Okay. But
Mr. Manning has the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Mr. Manning, you want to reply to that as well?
Had a sidebar. Was this the question regarding split payments? We've consulted with the comptroller's office, and unfortunately, as we feared, we will have to appropriate the entirety of the amount. Now, I have no doubt that they will be more than willing to bill us separately, possibly, but similar to Fire Hall a couple of years ago, the entirety of the liability or the project is what the board will have to appropriate and have funds readily available for before moving forward.
Okay. Yeah. Good, thank you. Okay, any other business come before this committee at this time? Move to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Thank you, committee.